the east, and that will allow some weather fronts to move their way in from the west. So by the time we get to Wednesday, we could see a bit more rain moving in across some western areas, but temperatures staying relatively mild for the time of year. That's it for now. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB newsroom. Merseyside police have arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following violent protests outside a hotel housing asylum seekers in Knowsley on Friday night. Witnesses described the scene around the Suites Hotel as being like a war zone as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van. Police say the violence, which has been condemned by politicians, left an officer and 2 members of the public with injuries. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. More than 2,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year, Home Office figures suggest. 110 people made the dangerous journey in 3 small boats yesterday. There have now been more crossings in 2023 than in January and February of last year combined. The Home Office resumed responsibility for Channel crossings in January following 8 months in which the Royal Navy was in charge. The UN aid chief Martin Griffiths has warned that the death toll in Turkey and Syria from Monday's earthquakes could double. His comments come as the number of dead in southern Turkey and northern Syria has now passed 25,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say the window is closing. Mr. Griffiths says the UN will carry out separate aid appeals for Turkey and Syria in the coming days.
What happened here on Monday, the epicenter of the earthquake, was the worst event in 100 years in this region. We have a clear plan tomorrow or the next day to give an appeal for a 3-month operation to help the people of Turkey with humanitarian assistance. And we will do a similar one for the people of Syria.
A man has died and a second remains in hospital following a double stabbing in East London. Officers were called to Hackney Wick at 4:30 this morning when the victims, both in their 20s, arrived at hospital with knife wounds. A 26-year-old later died from his injuries. Forensic teams are searching the White Post Lane area where the incident took place, and so far no arrests have been made. Now, with the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley now in its 16th day, her partner says he wants to keep all options open about her disappearance. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has yet been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. Despite this, Mr. Ansell says his gut instinct tells him she didn't fall into the river.
Personally, I'm 100% convinced it's not the river. People don't just vanish into thin air. It's absolutely impossible. So something has happened. Something has happened. Find out what it is. I want every house, every garage, every outbuilding, the land scrutinised. I want it all searched. I want it all scrutinised. Every piece of it.
A British drug dealer has been arrested in Thailand after a 5-year hunt by the National Crime Agency. Richard Wakeling from Essex attempted to import £8 million worth of liquid amphetamine into the UK in 2016. The 55-year-old fled in 2018 before his trial began and was sentenced to 11 years in his absence. He remains in custody in Thailand and extradition proceedings are underway. The US military has shot down an unidentified object flying over Alaska. President Joe Biden made the decision to bring down the craft, which is the size of a small car. The UFO, which was flying at 40,000 feet, was considered a risk to passenger jets. It follows the downing last week of a Chinese surveillance balloon, which was flying over the United States. An arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards an officer. The protest broke out after far-right demonstrators clashed with a group of demonstrators who gathered to support the event. Those opposed to the storytelling were heard shouting, "No drag for kids" and "Leave our kids alone." The Coronation emblem for King Charles and the Queen Consort has now been unveiled. It was created by former Apple designer Sir Johnny Ive. It features an image of St Edward's crown, which will be used to crown the monarch and was inspired by the King's love of nature. The emblem also includes the Rose of England, the Thistle of Scotland, the Daffodil of Wales and the Shamrock of Northern Ireland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Nana Akua.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Well, I'm sick to my back teeth of this gender pronoun minefield. I mean, this non-binary ridiculousness. I mean, take, for example, the situation with Susanna Reid and, of course, what's his face? Sam Smith was on, and unfortunately, Richard Madeley made the mistake of calling Sam Smith a him, and he was corrected by Susanna Reid, who said, no, it's they. I mean, there's only one of them. There's only one of him, isn't there? But apparently this non-binary nonsense, which I've come to understand is the reason it's called non-binary is because it's plural, because the person is both male and female, they, which is, in my view, a bit ridiculous because every human being on this earth is made up by male and female, i.e. the egg and sperm. But why, oh why, is there this obsession? So the other day, the question being asked was whether God is non-binary. Really? Does it matter? Surely God is in your head and is whatever you want it to be. The discussion was whether we now need to change the words and use non-binary terms or androgynous. I mean, androgynous, isn't that the word that we had anyway? Why are they coming up with this? So certain prayers would be updated, like Our Father, Our Them. I need some organ music. Actually, my producer, Natalie, she plays the organ. Can you strum off a few chords together? I'll give it a go. Ow, they, or them, or they, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Exactly. To be fair, I think the Church of England has a lot more to deal with than whether or not God is non-binary, like historical sexual child abuse and its lack of acceptance of LGBT people. Rather than addressing whether or not God is non-binary, perhaps it could actually address the question of a Caucasian Jesus, which, given the backstory, doesn't really make much sense. Now, to date, there are now, 78 gender pronouns at the last count. I think a little while ago, when I counted, it was at 76. You got the, is, theirs, theirs, themselves, themselves, this self. I mean, herself. They've just made that up. It's nonsense. I'm sorry, but I would struggle with all of those, well, most of those. The normal ones I can do. Politicians like Nicola Sturgeon have managed to get themselves in a god-awful mess, pardon the pun, with a gender reform bill that looks like it's on the scrap heap. I mean, it would have made it easier for people like rapist Adam What's-His-Face to play the system. He was foolishly put in a female jail when he decided to identify as a woman at the last minute and became a her or a she. Seriously. It seems that supposedly perfectly intelligent people are coming a cropper with this claptrap. And with prominent events like the Brits going gender neutral, it's not really helping anyone. This made-up diatribe has to stop. I, for one, did not agree to these made-up words and the ever-increasing number of them. Not only does it not make sense, but in many instances, it makes a mockery of the English language, and my colleague, Dan Wootton, points this out.
If I called you he all night, would you be thrilled?
Would I be thrilled? No, wouldn't I?
Exactly.
Carol
is a she. You would, exactly,
I'm a
and
she.
Sam is a they. It's simple.
No,
You got it. Well done.
Sam,
They is just a butchering of the English language.
It's not, because Sam Smith is a he.
Yeah.
He's a man. And even if you try, even if you believe in this thing that you should call people whatever pronouns they want, actually common sense
Look,
just takes
this is turning into blasphemy laws. Like, I don't believe in gender ideology. That is my right.
Well, make sure you catch up with Dan Sarah. It's fabulous. Monday to Thursday evenings, 9 till 11. Well, frankly, there are two genders, male and female, and anything in between is still a combination of the two. That's it, folks. Deal with it. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to bring back national service? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave a historic speech in Westminster where he asked the UK to provide fighter jets to help counter Russian attacks. With tensions escalating in Europe, there's a huge, should we bring back compulsory national service? Then at 4:50, it's time for my royal roundup, and royal biographer Angela Levin will be live to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. Now, the Princess of Wales was spotted embracing her former history teacher during an official engagement in Cornwall. That is despite Meghan Markle having implied that Kate wasn't a hugger in a documentary. Remember that? Yeah. And then at 5, it's this week's difficult conversation. Anti-violence campaigner Alison Cope will be with me because, according to the Office of National Statistics, knife crime homicides have reached record highs across England and Wales in the year to March 2022. And in the early hours of the morning, 2 people were stabbed in East London only today, with 1 man later dying in hospital. Alison lost her son to knife violence 10 years ago. She'll be live to talk me through her plight and all her campaign work. Well, that's on the way in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, I'm going to start with you, Sam Dowler. So, all this stuff, I mean, these gender pronouns, surely you're a fan?
I am a fan.
I knew you would be. I mean, really.
Well, I mean,
why?
if we go back to, obviously, you know, the origin of the story was to do with the Church of England. I mean, I've always thought of God is non-binary anyway, and it's actually, like Christians since ancient times have never thought of God as having a gender, because obviously God's not a human being either. So it's like, it's kind of a moot point, and I think, I think people have used it, especially some media outlets, as a way of, bashing people who want to appear as, who want to say they are non-binary, by saying like, oh, even the church, etc., etc., etc. But non-binary people do exist. That's, for example, Sam Smith. That is how they feel.
Non-binary. When did that word come up there? How long ago did they make that up?
Non-binary. It's hundreds and hundreds of years.
I've never
people
heard
have been,
anybody being
hundreds and hundreds of years, like back in ancient Egypt, back in ancient India,
But the actual word non-binary, like the actual term non-binary. I mean, I could say in the last maybe 5-6 years, that's when I've heard it being.
Well, non-binary means just like not part of two, as in like.
But that terminology has just been made up. Just recently.
Well, no, I mean, it's been assigned to this, but like, we live in changing times, and and gender is one of these things that is fluid, and it's and kids today often are gender diverse, and like, adults are gender diverse.
Or female, but you'll sit on the spectrum somewhere.
No, there is a spectrum. It's like with sexuality, there's a spectrum as well for that.
Yes, there is a spectrum.
You're not gay or straight. A lot of people are in between.
Okay, but there are two in between two genders, so you could be at that end of male or that end,
that's
but
fine.
there are only.
So in the middle, you're they, them.
Well, that's ridiculous, because you're only one.
Seriously, heaven help us. Our non-binary who aren't in heaven. Oh, come on, Sam. This is just going way too far. I actually think this is a conspiracy by Nicola Sturgeon to increase support for her gender reform bill. I mean, seriously, please.
She's not in touch with the Lord,
Well, let's just say the Book of the Common Prayer is part of this country's cultural heritage, and that's the way it should stay. Sam, please don't let a bunch of here today, gone tomorrow clerics try and ruin the words.
You also can't say that you know better than the clerics, or that you know better than the Church of England.
But this is them bowing down again to the
woke
brigade.
They're trying to be inclusive.
No, because the church is in decline.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they can't get funds in their pews.
Tell us why the church is in decline.
Because they are now going to the woke brigade, trying to play the game, as Nicola Sturgeon did, using the trans community to win political points.
The church is on decline because it's pretty boring. I mean, if you go to the church, it is. I mean, you go to church, it's so dull in the end. You just think, oh God. That's why some of the evangelical churches and things like that are obviously growing in popularity, because people want to feel good when they go to church.
But you also said that that they obviously have a lot to answer for, the church anyway, with historic abuse, and we just and people have been said about Sam Smith, for example, like, oh look, he's evil, etc. But evil to me is like the gun lobby in America. It's the anti-abortion. It's forcing a child to have a baby after she's been raped. That is what's evil to me, and that's all done in the name of God.
But let's
is their God-given right to have a gun? I mean, come on
now. If you
now.
want to be honest about Sam Smith, was he successful before this? When he was Sam Smith,
they were successful. Yes,
he was nowhere near as successful. And he's now got on all the front covers and gone by using that, and that is the truth.
They already won Grammys before this even happened.
Listen,
what are you talking about?
This is nonsense. And look, the Church of England has got more. It should be praying for real, not this nonsense, but we're looking at places like Turkey and Syria that are having the most horrific time at the minute. This is absolute nonsense. It really is, and I'm sick to death of it. And people are using it for their own good, and that, as Nicola Sturgeon is using the trans community as political pawns. And now the Church of England have jumped on the bandwagon.
Well, they sort of have. They sort of haven't. I mean, they're not here. The Church of England aren't here to defend themselves, but that is a fact that they were talking about it. I was watching this on one of the programmes earlier this week, so they were talking about.
They've been discussing it for 10 years. They have said, this isn't a new thing at all for the Church of England. So I mean, obviously once again everybody else is using this as a weapon to bash the gender diverse.
But this is all about lack of attendance, let's be honest, in the church, and this is what it's truly about. And if the church doesn't know what it stands for by now, then really, Lord help us. Maybe they should get Dominic Cummings in to help them. Well, no, he's on the other side, isn't he?
Dominic Cummings.
Yeah.
No, the bottom line is, I think they're trying. I mean, it would be good if the church could slightly adapt to the situation and life as is. So some would argue that actually having a non-binary God and talking about it in those terms is actually more progressive, right? But that would mean that they would have to change a lot of things, like certain prayers, like Our Father and all this kind of stuff, where God is referred to as a male, which is how it is in pretty much.
But they're not saying that. If you look at that, no one's going to change any of the prayers. No one's going to change how they speak. Like
yeah, but this is a slippery slope.
And also, one of the Holy Ghosts is apparently a woman anyway. So I mean, like these like I mean, this is all just stories really. Anyway, it's whether you think.
And look, it's the beautiful language. How dare they even think of changing it? Next, we'll be changing Shakespeare.
Changing the language.
Next, they'll be changing Shakespeare. It's going too far, Sam. It really is. And people are making money from it. And like Sam Smith.
Who's making money from it?
Sam Smith.
Can I just say, these gender pronoun list is growing and it's constantly growing. So I'm afraid we should just get back to basics, because even the young people who are going along with this wokery will start to tie themselves in knots. Well, listen, make sure you can join in with everything here on GB News. If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky asked the government to provide fighter jets to help defend against Russian attacks during his visit to the UK. With tensions rising in Europe, is it time to bring back compulsory national service? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can tweet me at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now asking you that very question. Should we bring back compulsory national service? Cast your vote now. We'll be back after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And don't forget to download the GB News app. You can download it for free and check out all the programmes on the channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing the idea of a non-binary God. Let's have a look at what you've been saying. Richard said, "Dear Nana, it is being said on GB News that protesters against a drag queen story hour are far right, which is a bit odd when they are common sense and concerned people." I agree. I don't know why people say that's far right. I don't like that when people go dressed like that to children's schools. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. Sharon says, "Hi, Nana. I thought it was that God made Mary pregnant and was therefore Jesus' father, and thus the father of Christianity. It's that simple. Is it?" Thank you for that. Thanks for explaining it. Robin says, "As far as I'm concerned, people who want to describe themselves as non-binary or whatever term they prefer is fine, provided I don't have to get involved in this nonsense." Well, I'm sort of with you. I don't want to ruin the English language to that. It just doesn't, frankly, make any sense. But keep those thoughts coming. It's time now for our Great British Debate This Out. And I'm asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? Now, earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave a historic speech at Westminster Parliament where he thanked the UK for leading the way in Europe and providing aid to Ukraine. He also gave, was it Lindsay Hoyle? He gave him the helmet, which looked like Lindsay Hoyle was actually going to put on. It was like he didn't know whether to put it on or put it down. Thank God he didn't put it on. But in his message, there was still one key plea. Ukraine need more fighter jets to counter Russian attacks, whilst the Prime Minister said that nothing was off the table in providing military support. Now, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said supplying aircraft to use in the war would potentially take months. And this comes as the Russian embassy in London warned that sending fighter jets to Ukraine would cause military and political consequences for the European continent and the entire world. But how much help should we provide? I mean, the growing tension within Europe as a result of the war, is it time, though, we start to look at our own services and maybe consider bringing back compulsory national service? So for the Great British Debate This Out, that's what I'm asking. Should we bring it back? Well, joining me now is Major Mike Shearer, he's a former military spokesperson, and Nick Tenconi, is that right how I say it? Tenconi, Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point UK. Also joining me is Rebecca Reid, author and journalist, and Danny Armstrong, political commentator. Right, so I'm going to start, actually, with you, Major Mike, because I want to hear from you. National service, should we bring it back?
Definitely not. I think there's certainly a cry should go out for more soldiers within the establishment. But look, national service, I think, in its day, when it was formed in 1949, served a purpose. But it was quickly, within 7 years, the MOD asked for it to be removed. It took about 6 years for that to happen because it was such a distraction to their day-to-day business. So I think we learn lessons from the past, and the answer is no. More soldiers, but not as a conscription.
I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to bring in Danny Armstrong.
Yeah, well, I don't think they should bring back compulsory national service for a couple of reasons, really. I mean, I come from a country that has just enlisted 300,000 troops or mobilised them to basically put them into a meat grinder. In Ukraine, many were shipped off without prior knowledge that they were even eligible to go to Ukraine. They didn't really understand the war. A lot of them fled. A lot of them were my friends. A lot of them qualified just simply because of their profession. Some people who were involved in medicine were conscripted as medics. I don't think it should be brought back mainly for that reason. People think it's a great idea to instill discipline. They think it's a great idea to give men a purpose. But they don't really think about it when their sons, their husbands, the guy they like in the office is shipped off to a war far, far away that they know nothing about or neither support. And of course, as Mitch just said there, it was brought in 1949. Yes.
Yeah, but Danny, I mean, you've seen the situation right now. If, say, the war was to be turned to us in the UK, we've got, an army of about 70,000. Let me bring in Nick. Nick, your thoughts?
We have strength in
Sorry,
numbers.
let me bring in Nick. Hang on.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So once again, feelings matter more than facts, do they, Danny? So we've got massive societal disharmony. We have no societal unity. We've never been more divided. And I've heard military people far more educated on the subject than myself. We've got huge problems within the government don't want to get their hands dirty when it comes to culture. It's all economics and liberalism. They don't want to get their hands dirty. We've got fatherlessness. We've got stabbings just in the waiting room a minute ago. The news is absolutely abhorrent, gender nonsense, radical Marxist theory getting pumped out of our institutions. We've got beta male on the rise. It's not about military intervention. Modern-day warfare, I don't need to be high-ranking. I know that having 200,000 foot soldiers may not be that useful right now. It's about societal unity. It's about getting men back on track and creating that love of the country and the patriotism that's required as a key aspect to achieving societal unity and coming away in massive middle finger up to the woke nonsense, because that's where we're headed. That's what's happening. That's what's getting pumped out of our institutions. Throw in digital media, throw in absent parenting, fatherlessness. Something's got to change. The government needs to get their hands dirty and go, right, we need a collective, unified society, and there must be themes that's built around. Patriotism is the #1 thing in terms of achieving that cohesion.
Rebecca Reid, you're shaking your head there.
I've just had my Botox topped up and I was really testing it then because I can't make any of the faces that I really wanted to make. I think the idea that you could solve any of those problems with the army is so funny, not least that one of the professions with the highest levels of infidelity is being in the military. So the idea that you're going to solve fatherlessness by making people run around playing army games for a year. Also, can you imagine if, you'd have to do it for men and women because it'd be insane not to. Imagine if someone like me was put in for national service. Imagine the time wasted while I cry and talk about my feelings while they try and teach me how to take the pin out of a grenade. It's literally one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. And it's only ever mooted by people who are too old to have to do it. So the only way in which I could support it is if you do it for 1 year at 65.
Nick, she said it's only supported by people who are too old to do it. That'd be you, me, in fact, all of us. I support it.
All of us, yeah.
Well, yeah, just what nonsense. There's some sort of link there between, infidelity and fatherlessness. Sorry, what's that link? That doesn't make any sense. Also, my understanding is male national service, unless we wanted to talk about changing that. No one wants to hear you cry about your feelings, trust me. So I'm a little bit confused by what you say and how you could be so put out by what I've said, and you're saying the opposite, that we have societal cohesion at the moment. Are you mad?
No, I have to give Rebecca a chance to reply to that, because that's a little bit unfair. She's not mad.
No, sorry. I mean, lots of people like to hear me cry about my feelings. It's basically my whole job. So just to go back to the fatherlessness thing, the reason I'm talking about infidelity is because relationships often end because of infidelity, and also the lack of emotional support for people who have been in the forces is such that you have more broken marriages coming out of the army than in other professions.
Can I bring Mike Shearer?
That's precisely true. That's precisely true. And of course, it's a woke idea to say that men need to be dominated and need to be funneled into the army just to learn these basic things. Of course, I mean, fathering is important. I mean, being the head of a family is, of course, important. It's important for raising decent young men. But why would they find that in the army?
Danny, I don't think you said...
in a country...
Danny, I don't think you said that men need to be dominated. Danny, hold on, sorry. He didn't say that men need to be dominated. He was talking about a sense of community and cohesion. I want to bring in Mike.
Well, I think I would agree with a lot of what Nick said, except that I wouldn't have them on a separate order of battle, the ORBAT. As I said at the very beginning, the army does need... We don't even have an army, let's face it. In normal military parlance, you need at least 100,000 men to create an army. So at best, really, we've got a home defence. We have. I'll go with that. I'm not going to argue that point. But the point that I'm making is that we do need more soldiers on the ground. And all the points that Nick raised, I would salute and say, yep, let's go with that, but not as part of conscription. If conscription was to come in, and I may be teased into agreeing with it, if it was on a separate budget, not coming out of the MOD, and if it was not part of the order of battle and was separate to that, then I could maybe go along with it. But not as a social experiment for the army to become social carers.
Well, it wouldn't be a social experiment, because I think we've got a depleting army. Danny.
Yeah, I mean, well, I've lived in a couple of countries. I've lived in Switzerland, I've lived in Russia, where they do have compulsory national service. Russia, of course, is one that is especially relevant right now with the amount of people that are being conscripted and signed up to a war, as I said, that they know nothing about and might really not support in any way, shape or form. Or might be just doing it because of their family receives some remuneration or receives some kind of glory. I don't think the UK is really under attack. It's not under attack or under threat of any kind of invasion just because Russia has higher numbers of troops. Of course, that Russian mentality of just sending wave and wave of young men to defeat any army or any threat that they have is very prevalent in their society. It's not really prevalent in ours. We have soldiers that are much more skilled than those. I think the army is a good thing for teaching for men that want to go into it, for teaching all the things that maybe Nick said. But I don't agree with the idea that it should be compulsory and men should be conscripted to go to war just because they need to do a
Danny, by your own thing though, you said that a lot of your friends didn't want to go in and people didn't want to do this and people didn't want to do that. The only way we're going to build an army
precisely. They didn't want to fight
hang on. I've not finished. Excuse me. Stop. I've not finished. which therefore means that the only way to get people to definitely do it is to perhaps make it compulsory. I'm going to give the final word briefly to Rebecca and then quickly to Nick as well. Quickly.
I just think we please remember that the army is not entirely made of men. It's made of people, not just men. And I think it bothers me very deeply that everybody has made that mistake in this conversation. So could we please try and remember that? And yeah, I just think if we had a budget to try and make young people happier and more cohesive, I'd be putting it into schools, not guns.
Finally to you, Nick.
Well, what's the point of putting it to schools? It's just radical far-left Marxist theory. We talk all the time about far-right. It's absolute nonsense. We should be addressing the far-left, which the government doesn't want to get its hands dirty on. I've just come back from the front line in Ukraine. I've seen those guys. I've looked them in the eyes. I've interviewed them. They're solid. They're unified. They have a brotherhood. There's a sense of duty. And to Danny's point earlier on about, if we send men and fathers and whoever else off, what about how that might affect them? This is how far gone we've got. Russia's on the brink. This is a very real threat. My argument is very much more along the cultural lines, fighting back in the cultural war, most importantly. But in terms of the military, as Mike said, far wiser than I am. Yeah, 150,000 when I went for Sanders in 2011, down to 70,000, etc., etc. Greece spent 2.4% of their GDP, and they got 200,000 on military. It's different warfare now. It's tech warfare. That's not the point. This is about fighting back in the culture war. The government needs to step up and do something.
OK, well, listen, thank you very much. Nick Tenkoni, he's the Chief Operating Officer of Turning Point UK. Major Mike Shearer, former military spokesperson. Also, Rebecca Reid. And then Danny... I forgot your last name. Sorry, Danny Armstrong. Political commentator. Sorry, Danny comes here every Sunday. I shouldn't forget. Well, if you just joined me, welcome on board. It's coming up to 33 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also political commentator Sam Dowler. Then stay tuned, because at 5 o'clock, this week's difficult conversation, it's all about knife crime. Homicides have reached record highs due to knife crime. That's across England and Wales. Anti-violence campaigner Alison Cope will be in the studio. We'll be here to talk about her son, who lost his life to knife crime many years ago. Joshua was a British rapper and one of the leading artists of the UK grime scene before his life was tragically taken. She now uses her personal experience to help others going through the same thing. All of that after your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tatiana Sanchez in the GB Newsroom. Merseyside police have arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following violent protests outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. Witnesses described the scene around the Suites Hotel in Knowsley as being like a war zone, as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van on Friday night. Police say the violence, which has been condemned by politicians, left an officer and 2 members of the public with minor injuries. Security has been increased following the incident, with reinforced fencing and a police presence. UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths is warning that the death toll in Turkey and Syria from Monday's earthquakes could double. His comments come as the number of confirmed dead has now passed 25,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say the window is now closing. As the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley continues onto its 16th day since her disappearance, her partner says his gut instinct tells him she didn't fall into the river. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. And an arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards an officer. The protest broke out after demonstrators described by some as far-right clashed with others who'd gathered in support of the event. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone.
No.
My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board. If you've just joined in, where have you been? It's coming up to 38 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream us on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua. And it's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? Now, earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky gave his historic speech at the Westminster Parliament, which was quite incredible, especially as English isn't his first language, although he did hand Lindsay Hoyle that hat, which it did appear that Lindsay was going to put it on. Thankfully, he didn't. But also, Volodymyr thanked the UK for leading the way in Europe and providing aid to Ukraine. But in his message, there was still one key plea. Ukraine needs more fighter jets to counter Russian attacks. While the Prime Minister said that nothing was off the table in providing military support for them, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said that supplying aircraft to use in the war would potentially take months. But how much help should the UK provide? And also with the growing tension within Europe as a result of the war, perhaps we need to start thinking about our own military personnel. Is it time that we try to enhance it by bringing back national service? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? Because you know, if you just gave people a choice, they'd say no. To discuss it, joining me now is my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Right, so national service, I mean, it became a thing in 1949, where it was compulsory for 18 months, and people had to do it. It was men, I think it was age 16 to 21, and you had to do it. And if you were studying, then you could do it after. Lizzie, do you think that we should consider doing that? And I would say everybody, it's not just men, I'd say women, I mean everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Well, no, I wouldn't. I don't agree with it. And my boys of that age, I would be mortified if they had to go away and do national service. I'm going to be, you know, deadly honest. I can understand why people think this could actually be a blessing for a generation of youth that are just hooked on social media, knife crime going through the roof, and getting some real respect and discipline into their lives. I can understand it, but for me, on a personal level, no, I'm just saying two sides of the coin. But as me as a mother, I wouldn't want it. And look, my friends are in Austria, where it is. You have to do it. And when you go to, you know, this guy had the most amazing education, came out with a degree, but had to go and do national service, lost the job he wanted.
Well,
so
the other one, though, with the compulsory stuff, you were allowed to come back to the job that you left, so there was a deal that you had to come back.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I can understand the pros and cons of this, but personally, as a mother, I would hate it if my boys had to go and do this on a personal level. I'm just being totally honest. We need to we have to increase our own army establishment. That's what we need to do by trying to recruit to our army, because our army at the minute, well, I mean, they're doing everything from being ambulance drivers. Everyone's counting on the army, and we need to spend that money in recruiting the army and making it more, attractive job.
You've convinced me to go for compulsory service. So I went to a private school and we had to do something called CCF, which was Combined Cadet Force. So that was we had to choose whether we were going to do Army, Navy or Air Force. And I chose Navy because my granddad was in the Navy, my cousin was in the Navy as well. And do you know what? It wasn't for me, shockingly.
Really? Did you enjoy it at all?
No. Well, there were certain aspects I did enjoy. Like I was #1 in my shooting class, for example, rifles, darling. But the problem they had at the school was that just boys in the year above were like officers, and who obviously power went to their heads, and they were like, oh, do this, do that, and then ended up not wanting to do something, hiding in a bush for the first and last time, Nana, and they again. Then I got thrown out. I had to do with detention and stuff, but like I
would never believe that.
I know, but there was aspects of it that were obviously good, and I do think like with kids today and social media, etc., that it might be like jolt them into like some sort of like respectfulness towards the country.
It'll bring discipline and organisation and some cohesion, which is what Nick was pointing out, which I think is really, really lacking, and also a reality check, because a lot of people are obsessed with social media. I'll be honest, I don't particularly like social media. I do it because I should do it. But the people who are liking you aren't real people, or they are real people, but they're not real friends. And it is, I think young people get so absorbed in it that actually if they started to get a sense of community and spend more time around actual people doing things together instead of on a screen, I think...
But there's another way of doing it, because it violates free will. It does.
Not really.
And when I was growing up, we had, sadly, we don't have this anymore, but
you
we
had
had youth
conscription
clubs.
when you were growing up.
No, we had
It wasn't alive then, come on.
There were square wheels. How dare you? How dare you? But we had youth clubs, and there were things where we had, we had hobbies. Now that knife crime is going through the roof, it's like lawless Britain, and I think sadly a lot of the youth has lost respect and discipline. But it is down to parenting and many other aspects of the community.
But I agree with both of you. Like, it is to do with respect. Do you know what I mean? If it encourages younger people to respect older people or to respect the rule of law, and rather than because obviously things happen with youths at the moment, like spitting in the face or like having no respect for their elders, etc. That that wouldn't fly early, like a decade ago, and yet now it's fine. So maybe on that front, but I think maybe it should be voluntary, or like maybe the parents should.
But we've got to make it more attractive. I think we've really got to increase the army establishment as a whole.
We've also got the small thing of a potential war in this country with only a few people in the army by the looks of it and hardly any kit. So we honestly, genuinely have to address that. How are we going to do that? And I'd say that the way to do it is to start building an army and start building that sort of patriotism as well that comes with being part of an army. And because this country is so multifaceted, so we have people from all parts of the world here now who are British, perhaps actually it will give a sense of patriotism towards this country and also some sort of discipline and a reality check, which I think we need. And it could potentially build the army, because we'll find people who will want to stay.
But Putin can't even do that now, and like obviously he's sold this war as like they're saving the Ukraine, etc. But they've tried to conscript people in, and they've tried to run away because they know it's a death sentence. But they're trying to leave the country.
But this is why it's so important that we have to keep giving to the Ukraine. We have to, because who knows what he is a madman. Who knows where he'll try next? We have to support them in every sense.
Yeah, but what we're doing is these people who are training are just we're teaching discipline, but within there will be a bunch of people who wouldn't have thought about joining the army who will. So what they actually will be doing is creating a recruitment pool of people who may potentially carry on in the army. That's really what it's about, not forcing the people who are doing it because they have to stay. And I think we need something like that in this country. Otherwise, well, OK, you can stay on your social media, do your likes, you can do that, and then when there is war, everyone just runs away.
Yes, it's true.
They'll be on TikTok going, help!
The National
my friends, I've
Service.
got 1 million people who like me.
Doesn't matter when someone's attacking in your own backyard.
National Service is outdated. We have to all agree it's outdated.
No, I don't agree.
I feel it is to the highly skilled forces, and there needs to be a different way of attracting and helping our army as it is at the moment.
Well, I'm going to speak to some people. I'm going to have a chat with Lee, who's one of our great British voices. Then when after that, Liz will come up with an idea of how we can attract people without forcing them to join the army. Because this show is nothing without your thoughts. Let's welcome our great British voice. And, of course, we're going over to Bristol. I like going over to Bristol. It's so lovely.
Oh, I like
Lovely in
Bristol.
Bristol.
It is very nice.
Well, they turned me down for university there.
Did
get
they?
the grades.
If I made the right decision.
I'm going to say.
That was a terrible decision. Turn Sam down for university. Awful.
Lee, what do you think of this? National Service, is it a go? Should it be compulsory? Do we need to get on with it?
Depending on how it's structured and implemented, yes. I'd happily support some form of mandatory national service if done, like for a short time, possibly similar to how France or maybe Finland do it. There are some really good benefits from it. National unity and cohesion, personal development, economic benefits of all the jobs that are created around the additional services that are required for the military, civic education and improved military readiness. And the important ones to me, the most important parts to consider for me are personal development, civic education and improved military readiness, but based on what we're going on with the war in Europe at the moment. So I think some form of military service would be a huge benefit to young people. National service teaches them about responsibilities as citizens and the importance of serving their country. The point you made, Nana, was a very good one. I'm glad you touched on it because it does bring together people from diverse backgrounds and it promotes a sense of national unity and common purpose. And it also provides, valuable training and experience and skills that can be applied to future careers and personal lives. And those are things that are definitely lacking in modern society. So I do think it will have its benefits there. But the other main reason why I think it's a good idea is because it's quite concerning, especially with the war at the moment, that our military is way behind its peers. I think between 2021 and 2022, the military's seen a 30% decline in regular forces recruits. After speaking with US generals, Ben Wallace has said that the UK Army is in a dire state and the government should reverse swathing cuts because its equipment's become obsolete. It seems like we could learn a lot from countries like Finland, where they're regularly polled and like 87% of people polled, I think even last year, said that they would happily participate in defending their country. They did that poll 5 years ago and it was 84%.
Lee, it would be interesting if they did that poll here to see what the young people would say. Lee Harris, thank you very much. Yeah, good to talk to you. That's Lee Harris. He's our great British voice. He's there in Bristol. Right, well, today I've been asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? Lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. Paul says, no, we shouldn't, but there should be an expansion of the military again. It's going to be needed in the years to come. Graham says, nothing in a free democratic society should be compulsory. What about school? Frankie says, I have always believed people who refuse to get a job should be made to go into the armed forces. They would soon get a job, possibly. You might be right there. Well, thank you for those thoughts. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for our Royal Roundup. The emblem for King Charles' coronation has been unveiled. Designer Sir Johnny Ivy created the image based on the King's love of the planet. All of that on the way after this short break.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome on board. This is GB News. It's fast approaching 8 minutes to 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, there is always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. The Princess of Wales was spotted embracing her former history teacher during an official engagement in Cornwall. Now, that is, of course, despite Meghan Markle having implied that Kate wasn't a hugger in her documentary. Yes, perhaps she just didn't want to hug you. And the official emblem for the King's coronation has finally been unveiled. Each Saturday, as ever, I love to give you a rundown. And who better to do that than royal biographer Angela Levin. She joins me now. Angela, nice to see you. Right, Angela, we missed you not being in the studio. But talk me through then, because Meghan says Catherine doesn't hug people, but there is Catherine hugging people, which is...
Yes. I actually wondered whether she was doing to show that she could, because I think it's slightly unusual for you to really hug your former history teacher. I never hugged any of my teachers, however nice they were, but she also hugged a young woman who'd been on a polar expedition, and she gave her a huge hug too. But they were real monster hugs, ideal. But I think that she's now much more confident. She's got a new role. She's wife to the heir to the throne, and I think that she feels that she can get a bit looser in how she behaves.
She might be rubbing salt into the wound, hugging and going,
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't seem to be that type of girl, because the teacher said she was absolutely ideal, wonderful, terrific to teach. And I suppose he's got a soft spot for her to know actually who is the wife of the heir to the throne. But I think she's a very kind person, but she won't stand for much nonsense against her children, or her husband, which is quite right. It's a lovely smile, but she's also tough inside, which she actually has to be.
Well, absolutely. And as you said, she's definitely growing into the role even more so. Now, what about this story about Harry? He wants, is it Sarah? He wants them to stop talking about him losing his virginity. I mean, he started it.
Yes. I mean, it's getting more and more ridiculous. He actually had the audacity to say he had no regrets about anything he put in the book or has said. Well, I mean, that's heartbreaking, actually, because he could have said, well, yes, I realise I might have hurt people, but that hasn't come into his vocabulary. To say that is really ghastly. And then to say that, he hopes it dies down, not to say, look, I understand that it might have been difficult to her, and I should have actually just warned her. She didn't do him any harm. In fact, she moved him from A to B, didn't she, really? I think he could have showed her a little courtesy. I mean, he was quite nasty about her in the book. But when you saw her talking, she looked that it was really hurtful, but she felt she had to talk about it. She was completely unpracticed at talking on television or radio, but she felt she should, because she wanted to clear the air about herself, and she seemed a very nice, straightforward person. So he could have actually apologised, but you see, nowadays there's no apology in his vocabulary. We've seen that with his father, his brother, his sister-in-law. There are no apologies. He wants them to apologise, but my goodness, you're not going to get him to say anything that was wrong.
Now, I just want to ask, is the woman's name Sasha, actually? Is it that Harry wants Sasha to stop talking about the thing?
No, I think Sasha he wants her to stop talking.
Yeah,
he wants
Sasha.
it to die away. But she wanted to give her view because she thought all her friends and acquaintances knew her. So she wanted to, it's best to sort of talk about it. She was very kind to him most of the time. There are a few little digs that, at his age, he didn't really know how to satisfy a woman. But otherwise, it was quite nice. I think she just wanted to. She said she wants to go back and hide under a rock, which is awful, really, for her. Very unkind of him. And she's not out to get him. She's been quiet for 21 years.
Yeah,
and I think it's the real shame that he couldn't just say, oh, well, I do feel a bit guilty about that. There's nothing in it. It's wiped out all the nice parts of Harry. And he's just a sort of bully, unkind, resentful person.
Well, I mean, obviously Harry's not here to defend himself, but he did put it out there, so it's very difficult to defend him. Even he's not defending himself. What about this thing then? Catherine and William, their huge wealth in Cornwall. I mean, that's obviously they're doing nicely.
Yeah, they went visiting Cornwall in their new role as Duke and Duchess of Cornwall, and it's automatic that when Charles became king, they would get the Duchy of Cornwall for them. Well, I think there's 53,000 hectares, and it's worth over £1 billion. And last year it earned £21 million. It's an area where there is farmland, homes, offices, all sorts of things. It's a little country in its own, I suppose. William has said that he wants to make a lot of homes for people who are homeless, and this is something he's got from his mother as a child. She took him there 2 or 3 times so that he didn't feel that he was so spoilt, that he could understand that people had a very tough time, and he's gone regularly ever since. So this would be a place where he could do something for homeless people, and I'm sure he will. But it's a lovely place. It's a lovely area, and they're going to go there a lot and try and do a lot for the people there and get to know them and be very friendly. But I think that money is an astonishing. I mean, 21 million a year, and it goes up every time. But he has given money to help people in Turkey, and I'm sure that it will enable him to be very generous in a charitable way.
I bet Harry and Meghan must be seething in their small Montecito mansion in comparison. And what about finally the emblem for the King's coronation? It's been revealed.
Yes, I think it's absolutely delightful. There's something about it that is quite dainty but also powerful. It's got all the flowers of, Wales, Scotland, Ireland and England. And the crown inside is sort of cushioned by the red of the flowers outside. I think it's beautifully done and delicate. And we're going to see it, on anything that is about the coronation. And I think you won't tire of it. It's absolutely delightful.
Well, it's lovely, Angela. It's a pleasure to talk to you. That is Angela Levin. She's our royal biographer. Thank you so much, Angela. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still loads more to come in the next hour. Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 o'clock. We are live online on TV and on digital radio. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, anti-violence campaigner Alison Cope will be here to talk about her son who tragically lost his life as a result of knife crime. And then stay tuned, because for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? That is, of course, after Shamima Begum appeared on a front cover of a magazine. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. Good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Merseyside police have arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following violent protests outside a hotel housing asylum seekers. Witnesses described the scene around the Suites Hotel in Knowsley as being like a war zone as demonstrators threw missiles and set fire to a police van on Friday night. The Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has described the disorder as appalling, tweeting that the alleged behaviour of some asylum seekers is never an excuse for violence and intimidation. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. The UN aid chief Martin Griffiths has warned that the death toll in Turkey and Syria from Monday's earthquakes could double. His comments come as the number of dead in southern Turkey and northern Syria passed 25,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say the window is closing. Mr. Griffiths says the UN will carry out separate aid appeals for Turkey and Syria in the coming days.
What happened here on Monday, the epicentre of the earthquake, was the worst event in 100 years in this region. We have a clear plan tomorrow or the next day to give an appeal for a 3-month operation to help the people of Turkey with humanitarian assistance. And we will do a similar one for the people of Syria.
A man has died and a second remains in hospital following a double stabbing in East London. Officers were called to Hackney Wick at 4:30 this morning when the victims, both in their 20s, arrived at hospital with knife wounds. A 26-year-old later died from his injuries. Forensic teams are searching the White Post Lane area where the incident took place. So far, no arrests have been made. Well, an arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards an officer. The protest broke out after demonstrators, described by some as far-right, clashed with others who'd gathered in support of the event. With the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley now in its 16th day, her partner says he wants to keep all options open about her disappearance. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say that they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. Despite this, Mr. Ansell says his gut instinct tells him she did not fall into the river.
Personally, I'm 100% convinced it's not the river. People don't just vanish into thin air. It's absolutely impossible. So something has happened. Something has happened. Find out what it is. I want every house, every garage, every outbuilding, the land scrutinised. I want it all searched. I want it all scrutinised. Every piece of it.
A British drug dealer has been arrested in Thailand after a 5-year hunt by the National Crime Agency. Richard Wakeling from Essex attempted to import £8 million worth of liquid amphetamine into the UK in 2016. The 55-year-old fled in 2018 before his trial began and was sentenced to 11 years in his absence. He remains in custody in Thailand and extradition proceedings are underway. And the coronation emblem for King Charles and the Queen Consort has been unveiled. It was created by former Apple designer Sir Johnny Ive. It features an image of St Edward's crown, which will be used to crown the monarch, as was inspired by the King's love of nature. The emblem also includes the Rose of England, the Thistle of Scotland, the Daffodil of Wales and the Shamrock of Northern Ireland. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, Nana, it is back to you.
Good afternoon. It's coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also political commentator Sam Dowler. Still to come, it's time for my difficult conversation. And according to the ONS, knife crime homicides have reached record highs across England and Wales in the year to March 2022. Now, this comes as two men, only today, were stabbed in the early hours of this morning in East London, with one man later dying in hospital. Alison Cope lost her son to knife violence 10 years ago. She'll be here to talk me through her plight and all her campaign work. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? Former ISIS bride Shamima Begum is back in the spotlight following the release of her BBC documentary, where she details her journey to Syria. Shamima has been given a large platform to tell her story, despite having joined a death cult. Is it time to stop glamorising her? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. And now it's time for this week's difficult conversation. Now, the number of people killed with a knife in England and Wales has reached its highest level since the Office of National Statistics records began 77 years ago. Now, last year saw a staggering 19% increase in knife crime homicides. That's compared to the year before, with metropolitan areas accounting for the largest. Now, there were 282 murders, including involving a knife, in the year up to March 2022, and this comes as two men today, this morning, were stabbed in East London during the early hours, and one of them later died in hospital. Alison Cope's son, Joshua, was killed in a knife attack a decade ago, and since then she has become an anti-violence campaigner. She's been working tirelessly to prevent further tragedies from occurring, and Alison joins me now. Alison, thank you very much for joining me. Talk to me about your son. I mean, this was 10 years ago. So what happened to him? How old was he?
It'll be 10 years in September, and Josh was 18 when he was fatally stabbed. It was at an event. A minor argument quickly escalated into a fight, and a young man carried a knife for protection out of fear, and he stabbed Joshua once in the heart, and Joshua died 7 hours later from that single stab wound.
I mean, that must be absolutely horrendous for you to have to receive a call, I presume, to tell you that your son is injured. I mean, talk me through what you were going through.
Yeah, I actually received a knock on the door, and it was one of the young people at the event who knew immediately to come and get me. And I just knew in my heart that this was the beginning of the end. And there's no words to really explain how horrific it is, how traumatic it is. And the shock, the trauma enables you to go through that process, sitting, waiting, update, surgery, heart attacks, open heart surgery, rib cage broken open, and then to know that your child has taken his last breath and you'll never ever see him again. And then you then go into the next section of the reality of it, which is the police, the coroner's court, the funeral, the trial. And here we are now, 10 years later, and, you know, as we know, it's not getting any better. It's absolutely getting horrendously worse every time I talk about this. So.
And what kind of a boy was Joshua? What was he like?
Oh, he was quite difficult, but I absolutely adored him. But Josh was lucky. He was given the love, guidance and support he needed to turn it round from being difficult to being a very successful music artist. You know, I was very, very proud of everything he achieved personally and within the music industry, you know. But without that investment into him as a little boy, he probably wouldn't have been able to turn it round in the way he did. You know, so as any mum, you know, I was incredibly proud of Josh. I still am. And to be proud of your son, I was proud of his mistakes and his successes.
So do you have any other children?
I've got an older daughter, Sherelle. So I've got an older daughter. Knife crime has destroyed her life. Joshua's mine, the perpetrator, and every single person attached. So, you know, my daughter's doing as well as she can.
So talk to me about your campaigning, because since Joshua died, you've turned your hand to sort of campaigning against this. So what's been What's it been like? What have you been doing? And how can people sort of get involved and help in some way?
Yeah, it all started basically because a lot of young people were deeply affected by the loss of my son through the music industry. So I realised there was a real need to support young people that were suffering, who were dealing with trauma, because they found it really hard to express their emotions positively. So that's how it started. And with my son's inspirational life story, devastating death, a lot of people were listening, and it's just developed from a couple of conversations to over 1 million young people nationally. I speak to about 4,000 young people a week across the whole of the UK. And, you know, I speak to young people, I ask their opinion about knife crime, and it is horrendous, absolutely horrendous what we're seeing. I've delivered to hundreds of primary school children this week, and the perception of knife crime is that when they leave school, when they catch a bus, when they walk down a road, their life is at risk. And we know the number one reason for carrying a knife is fear, and we've got an entire country of scared children. And I find it so frustrating that millions of pounds has been invested in to reduce knife crime, but nobody's being held accountable for the fact that it isn't reducing knife crime, and yet we continually pump money into it, and then it still isn't having a reduction. So why is nobody actually having a look at that? So many millions has gone up in smoke. It's so frustrating to know that there is somebody at home maybe listening to this programme, a mum, a dad, a sister, a brother whose little boy or little girl is going to be bleeding out on the floor next week.
It's just...
And the question you asked me... Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just horrendous. I mean, there was the incident, the youth, the young people seemed to be so ferocious. I mean, there was the girl who was attacked outside a school the other day. I mean, what do you think could potentially... I mean, that was just awful. People were watching, standing by and cheering. And obviously, we can't talk about it too much because it's currently under investigation. But do you think that perhaps harsher punishments might deter the criminals? What do you think could be done to stop this awfulness?
We have to take a real step back here and, you know, again, find out why we're ignoring what people are saying, because the government's had report after report after report, has read it, oh, yes, terrible, and then we've continually made the same mistakes. For me, it's something you said about another piece of news that you'll be covering after, glamorization. Why are young people scared? Why are young people feeling that there's no other choice? Why do young people feel it's acceptable to film fights, to get into online arguments? The glamorization of youth violence. We have sold young people a dream very successfully, talk in a certain way, act in a certain way, be scared, be frightened, be filmed when you're being beaten up, when you're being hurt, because views will give you money. And there are influencers whose views have given them money. But we need to take a step back here and see what's fueling it. Yes, there will always be gangs. Yes, there will always be drugs. And I think the police are doing an exceptionally good job when they're aware of things like that. But what they're not doing a very good job of controlling is the amount of glamorization to make a young person think it's acceptable to speak in a certain way, act in a certain way, film in a certain way, and to know that there's a high risk chance that if they do carry a knife, that they probably won't get caught. If they do get caught, the consequences are very inconsistent. They know people that have got probation. They know people that have got a fine. They know people that just got a slap on the wrist. And I've said this previously.
Well, it's just you're right about that. And I just want to finally touch on, you've created an AI of your son. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, why have you done that?
That is right. Why? Lots and lots of money is being invested into knife crime campaigns, and I wanted to try my absolute hardest to reach more young people than I can reach as an individual. So lots of discussion, lots of hard work, 3 years in the making, and it is a AI of my son. It's called deepfake technology, talking about his own murder, and it is shocking, and it's not scary, it's age appropriate, but it makes people stop in their tracks and think, oh my gosh. And what is making young people stop in their tracks, because, you know, what they're seeing, a lot of it isn't real. They don't believe there's consequences to their action anymore. Not all young people, some. And so I wanted something that really kind of stopped them and made them just take a step back for a second and think, oh my gosh. And that moment of thought could be the difference between leaving the house with a knife or choosing not to. It's having a big impact, but...
Alison, I was going to ask you then, so is there some part of the campaign that people can get involved in? And if there is, do you have a website or something? Or, you know, are you working on a set campaign where people can get in touch with you? Because we're running out of time. So I want to make sure we get that in.
People can contact me on alisoncope.com. The last thing I would just want to say, any parent, grandparent watching this, one question: what percentage of teenagers carry a weapon? If your child answers anything over 2%, they're scared. Reassure them, find out what they're scared of, and you will have the solution to youth violence.
Alison, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. All your hard work. Keep going. We're behind you.
That is always. Thank you.
Alison Cope, lovely to talk to you. Sorry you couldn't make it into the studio. She's an anti-violence campaigner. Lovely to talk to you. That's Alison Cope. So stay tuned. It's just coming up to 17 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you just join me, I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? Former ISIS bride Shamima Begum is in the spotlight once more. That's following the release of her BBC documentary. Shamima Begum has been given a large platform to tell her story despite having joined a death cult. So is it time we stop glamorising this? We'll be back with that. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB Plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine. You're back now. That's good. It's coming up to 21 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? Former ISIS bride Shamima Begum. She's actually in the spotlight once again. That's following the release of a BBC documentary where she details her journey to Syria and expresses deep regret for her actions on TV. Shamima fled East London back in 2015 to join the terror organisation as a teenager alongside 2 others. Now, supporters claim that she was groomed by ISIS, whilst others would dub her as a traitor and knowingly and willingly joined a death cult. Not only has she had a documentary and a podcast, but she's recently featured on the front cover of The Times. Shamima seems to be receiving a lot of publicity despite being a former ISIS bride. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time that we stop glamorising terror? Well, I'm joined now by filmmaker and journalist Andrew Drury and reality TV star and commentator Narinder Kaur. Right, I'm going to start with you, Andrew. Now, you have met Shamima Begum. We spoke a little while ago.
Yeah, we did.
Talk to me about what you thought about her at the beginning and what your emotions were towards the end of your relationship with her.
When I first met her, I really liked her. I felt sorry for her. I thought my first thoughts were she was groomed and she was trafficked over there. So from the age of 12 or so, and I read what was in the press. And then it changed bit by bit, little things that she said to me. I got more and more negative towards her.
Like what? What did she say?
I think one of the big, I think we mentioned the babies, and I couldn't understand how she could lose 3 kids, and she was OK with it, and she was over that. She said, I'm over that now, and that surprised me.
She might have been saying that to sort of be, you know, sometimes people say, I'm over that, you know, as if...
She was over it.
Yeah, in your mind.
Oh, no, without a doubt. I mean, when you sit with somebody and you really know them, you know she was over it all right.
Right.
And then there was a change. She started to apologise. She felt guilty for what she'd done, or she said she was. And in the end, she was like, it's nothing to do with me, ISIS, you know. I'm sorry about it. I'm not...
No, sorry, carry on.
I mean, she was talking, she was saying, basically, wasn't sorry for what she'd done, she was become a victim, so she changed from saying sorry and then becoming a victim. And then she categorised herself by, this book really got to me, asked him for Guantanamo Bay Diaries. So she actually wanted a book or an instruction book to look at and say, you know, because he was a victim himself, so she was using the book as a guidebook.
But, of course, Shamima's not here to defend herself, but that's because she's in prison.
Yeah.
Narinder.
Well, I tell you, the thing is, though, Andrew, you've got the advantage. You actually know her. You've met her. The press has spent years demonising her. It's not glamorising. We're actually just seeing the other side that we desperately needed to see. And I'd say this BBC documentary, it reveals so much that we didn't know before. And, you know, I, for one, and I know, Andrew, we had a little discussion outside.
Yeah, we did.
There were so many questions. At the end of the day, what we agree on, the girl was 15 years old. She was groomed online by older men. Whose fault is that? She was groomed online.
That's not true.
She was still underage, Andrew. But she's 50. How did she get to Syria? How? My daughter's 50.
You asked him a question.
I can tell you how you got hold of that. Firstly, she wasn't groomed. She saw the documentary. She said she saw this one video of in a park where she showed the park. This is a famous one. We all know about it. She said that was the only thing she saw. Then she said she knew nothing about ISIS when she was 15, which is a load of nonsense because she wanted to join Islamic State. And there was another girl called Shamina, she was also 15, and they had this little talk group. She actually knew exactly what she was doing. Are you going to tell me you've got a computer and you're not going to look up ISIS if you're going to go and join them?
My daughter's 15, and you know how easily influenced they are. They're so impressionable.
Well, to join ISIS, a terror cult.
And you're saying she's changing her mind. We're entitled to change our mind. There's nothing wrong with that. I changed my mind, and you said she's vain. So I can be vain.
The vanity's
she's
not the issue,
girl.
is it? The vanity's not the issue.
The issue is
hang on.
she's a British citizen.
The vanity's not the issue, is it? It's how we're using her at the moment. When you saw that Times, did that not make you sick? Because you don't
did it make you sick? Yes or no?
No, actually, no.
Did you not think of the victims of when she said Manchester bombing was justified?
No, it was disgraceful.
So do you not think that magazine cover could have showed one of the girls that were affected by the bombing rather than...
No, because Shamima Begum is a benign member. She didn't do that. She was radicalised. She was radicalised. You have to have some sympathy by the people
who
on... Shamina, the other girl, also had... Well, why did the police therefore send a letter saying, actually, she's at risk?
How do you know Shamima didn't radicalise Shamina?
Miss Begum was at risk of being radicalised. Why would the police send that? And then, even worse, do nothing about it. The police did nothing about it. They knew she was at risk.
So when she was there, why did she not try to leave?
She tried to leave. She said that in this documentary.
She didn't. I spent a lot longer than Josh did there, and I know her really well because the messages we carried on having a relationship outside the camp. I knew what she's doing weekly. She never once tried to escape, and he never said that in the documentary.
She did say that. She said that.
Never once.
So you're saying that a child bride, by the way, Nana, she's not an ISIS bride. This whole image of this ISIS bride, child bride, sex trafficking.
Well, OK, hold on.
She could just walk out the house.
Girls did escape.
The person that she went off to see was from ISIS, wasn't he? So that would make her an ISIS bride. That's why they're saying.
Well, she's 15 years old, so under international law, that makes her a child.
OK, but she...
It makes it sex trafficking.
Yeah, she might, maybe, but she may have married this guy, so he's correct in...
Within 2 weeks of getting there.
Yeah, well, that's irrelevant.
No, it's 10 days
The fact that he's made is correct, that she's an ISIS bride.
She also,
child bride.
So she was part of the ISIS setup. She lived with an armourer that she said she never knew was an armourer. That's a lie, because she told me she knew what he was.
She's 15, what do you know?
So she told me that was a lie too. So she lived with the armourer. She said he was a quiet guy. He wasn't quite clearly. He would have had all the major figures of ISIS visit him. He was the armourer. So that was a lie.
Do you not think there's fear? When she's at these camps, you know when she's at the camps even, there's fear because there's ISIS...
But Narinda, how far does that fear go? OK, so you're 15...
I'd be scared.
If you think of the fear, you've left a perfectly safe environment, you've gone off somewhere to create fear for yourself.
Correct.
And now you're there, you are afraid, which you would be, but all of this is about fear. And then the fear that she's put into others. So I think what we're alluding to is the fact that we are thinking about the perpetrator rather than the victims. What about the victims, Narinda? What about... Talk to me about the victims.
Of course, we could talk about the victims all
No, I'm asking you. No.
We have full...
No. I'm asking you to talk to me about the victims, because you're saying about Shamima, so I'm saying, OK, let's sit from the other side. What about the victims?
It's dreadful, it's terrible, and we have full sympathy for that. Of course we do. But we're talking about Shamima, and Shamima Begum, at the end of the day, is living... No, she's not without fault. She is not without... She's not innocent. We know that. But let a British judge on that.
Why should she?
This country...
Why should you? If you
commit...
a
British citizen.
No, but that's not the point. If I'm a British citizen, hang on, and I commit a crime in America, where do I serve time? Where do I serve time?
Well, that's a...
Where do I serve time?
Well,
if I commit a crime...
But there's no law there. She can't serve time in Syria.
I've asked you a question.
She can't live her life in a tent.
I'm asking you a simple question. I'm a British citizen. I go to America. I break the law. Hang on. Where do I spend time?
America, because they've got their laws.
America.
But you can't... There's no law in a tent in a refugee camp. There's no law. She's stateless.
That's your limitation about the subject. There is a law. She's under the SDF, which is the Syrian Defence Forces law. She has been held there, and she will go to trial there. They have a judicial system, and she could go to trial there.
Do you think that's fair, Andrew?
Do I think it's fair? Why? Well,
do you not think she, as a British citizen who was an underage girl, should be tried here? If there's any evidence of any wrongdoing.
Can you finish? Because you've asked
what I'd like to say to you about this, before you think there's evidence of her joining the Hezbollah, which is a religious priest. That means that she would have controlled women's having their headscarves on. There's a possibility she sewed suicide vests. Now, I've been to the stadium where those vests were sewn on, and I've been to refugee camps where the effects of those suicide vests. And if she's guilty of that, no matter whether she was groomed or no, she did that. So you've got to be careful on how far... Well, she is guilty, because she's been tried in a court of justice where they proved the evidence. The evidence has been presented, and she's lost her citizenship for it, so I'd say she's guilty, because that's what she is.
But do you not feel any sympathy that actually she was 15 and groomed? She was.
Groomed by who?
From 13, 14, 15, online by grown men.
All she said is she looked at a video. There was no grown men doing it. I sat and spoke to her on a concrete slab.
My daughter would never just up and sticks
I don't think she'd join ISIS,
No, of course not, because therefore something went wrong
So why is it course not for her, your daughter, but not this girl?
Because my daughter has had advantages that Shamima Begum didn't have.
What advantage
and we must look at class.
What advantage was that?
What advantage did Shamima have that this...
She had no advantages. You look at the family upbringing. You've got to look at... There's no
context. What about the family upbringing?
She grew up in Tower Hamlets. She didn't feel like she belonged. In the documentary, she goes, I didn't...
what a load of nonsense.
She suffered racism.
What a load of nonsense.
She didn't feel...
Have you joined ISIS?
No, but I moved from Newcastle to
Leicester. Let's talk about this racism,
ISIS.
right? Because you brought the racism into it. I sat and spoke half an hour on racism to her, and I said to her, Why did you do what you did? Did you have racist comments against you for school? She said, one little girl, when I was about 6 or 7, she had no racist issues at all. So that's nonsense. And that documentary, that's a new story that Josh has put. And I believe that she was led to that answer.
Andrew, do you think, therefore, she should just stay in this camp, in this tent, for the rest of her life? As a British citizen.
She's living a better life than the ones in the refugee camp who've got no air conditioning. Child died during birth.
So that's fine then. She's lost 3 children.
What about the other women in the camp?
She was sex trafficked.
What about the other one?
She's our responsibility. Whether she's a troublemaker...
There's loads of British in there, so let them all go.
And lots of British do come back as well. Why is she being made a poster girl? Why is she suffering?
She's made herself
to
a poster
be made
girl.
an example
Why do you think... Listen, first of all, I don't know why she should be on the front of any newspaper, so I don't want her to be any poster girl at all. So I think that's wrong, full stop. But, I mean, Andrew does make a good point. Obviously, the points are his opinion, because he's actually met her.
I know.
You haven't actually met her. So he's giving you...
He's got an advantage,
He's giving you his judgment based on what he says, and Andrew doesn't come across to me as somebody who's easily fooled.
No.
But he was at the beginning.
I was, without a doubt.
But then that still doesn't take away his personal opinions about Shamima. I might meet her and think, oh, God, actually, I don't like her. But that doesn't mean that we throw her away. Well, she's our problem to take control of.
Why is she our problem, though?
Because she was born in Britain. She's a British citizen. Yeah, but her citizenship should never have been revoked, Nana. That was a minister making that. And that was actually very, very dangerous, because it sets a precedent that actually...
It's a different question, isn't it?
It's not a gift. Human rights is not a gift.
Andrew, I want you to finish this off. I want you to finish this off with your thoughts on this. Well, what do you think?
About the whole situation, I don't think she can ever come back, because she could bring a government down. I think the poster stuff that she's had, if she got brought back to this country now with that image you saw in that Times magazine, and I think whoever put that on should be questioned. I think, personally, I still believe that she should be tried here, possibly.
Yeah.
But I don't think she'll get that option. I think she'll be tried in Syria within the next few months, because I think that'll be the forced issue, and she'll do 20 years.
And just to correct something, she's not actually in prison at the moment.
No, she's not.
So
she's in a camp.
So I'm just correcting
in a better condition than the people in refugee camps.
And you would be happy
prison.
if your child was there, if they got influenced by someone.
My child would not be
Would you not
influenced.
do everything to get that person back? I mean, I'm not...
Well, their parents haven't done anything to get her back.
Her parents... Well, I don't know
exactly. Look at the family background.
They haven't, you know.
So
No, they haven't.
Andrew, there you go, the family background. She's got no one who actually loves her.
Well, maybe they feel
you can't say that, can you?
I feel... Oh, no parent would be...
Well, I don't know about
I think she's had a
Nana,
lot
you're
of lack
correct.
of
They
love.
feel ashamed of her because her sister doesn't want to talk to her, that she said, because of issues of embarrassment being involved with her. I asked if I wanted to send a message to her mum, and she said, no, I don't want to talk to my mum. I'll save it for my mum.
Well, and of course, those people aren't here to defend themselves.
No, they're not.
To confirm that, but I appreciate the thoughts. So thank you very much. Really good to talk to you, Andrew Drury and Narendra Kaur.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for their thoughts. So what are yours? I mean, what do you think? Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at GBNews. You are with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, we will continue with this great British debate. And I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also political commentator Sam Dowler. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Home Secretary has condemned what she described as the appalling disorder that happened during protests outside a hotel housing migrants in Knowsley on Friday. Suella Braverman tweeted that the alleged behaviour of some asylum seekers is never an excuse for violence and intimidation. This comes shortly after Merseyside police arrested 15 people aged between 13 and 54 following those violent protests. Security has been increased following the incident with reinforced fencing and a police presence. UN Chief Martin Griffiths is warning that the death toll in Turkey and Syria from Monday's earthquakes could double. His comments come as the number of confirmed dead has passed 25,000. Despite the conditions, rescuers have continued to find some survivors in the rubble, but they say that window for finding survivors alive is closing. An arrest has been made following a protest at a drag queen storytelling event for children at London's Tate Britain. Police say the person in custody is suspected of making a racially aggravated comment towards an officer. The protest broke out after demonstrators, described by some as far-right, clashed with others who'd gathered in support of the event. As the search for missing mum Nicola Bulley continues into the 16th day since her disappearance, her partner says his gut instinct tells him she didn't fall into the river. Paul Ansell was speaking to 5 News. Lancashire police say they suspect the mother of 2 fell into the River Wyre, but no trace of her has been found. They're now focusing their search further downstream and out towards the coast. TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
and right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView, Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 39 minutes after 5 o'clock. And it's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? Now, former ISIS bride Shamima Begum is in the spotlight once again. That's following her release of a BBC documentary where she details her journey to Syria and expresses deep regrets, that's better, for her actions. Now, Shamima fled East London back in 2015 to join the terror organisation as a teenager. That's alongside 2 others. Supporters claim that she was groomed by ISIS, whilst others would dub her as a traitor who knowingly and willingly joined a death cult. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to stop glamorising terror? Well, let me see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by Lizzie Cundy and also Sam Dowler. OK, Sam, I'm going to start with you first. Glamorising terror. She's on the front cover of The Times, the magazine. She's had a podcast, the BBC, a documentary series. I mean, I haven't had that much out of the BBC and I'm paying the licence. Do you know what I mean?
Look, I reiterate what your previous guest, Alison Pope, said about glamorising knife crime, glamorising terrorism.
obviously, it's appalling. A knife crime in this country is out of control. But I think in this case, I've watched the documentary and it isn't glamorising her at all. It isn't saying like she's some sort of like a victim. But she talks about like she was so naive when she went there at 15, and she says that she didn't even believe any of the like the murder videos that were going out. And she said that that she felt isolated. She felt she wanted to be Western, but she was she experienced racism, etc. in her, and she comes from a poor background as well. So I mean, like, she's still a human being at the end of the day. And while I do agree with
her victims, to be fair.
Well, I know, but she doesn't have any actual victims herself. She didn't do any terrorising herself.
Well, we don't know about that, though, do we? So I suppose it's not fair of me to say that, but then she wouldn't be in that camp awaiting trial for nothing.
Well, no, but she also said that when she got there, like, then she saw the videos and was a bit like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, sort of thing, and sort of maybe had to go along with it, because maybe if she didn't go along with it, she'd have been murdered. So I mean, there's so many nuances to the whole story. I think like it is in the public interest. Hence, the BBC have done it.
Why?
For us
I don't agree.
It's an interesting story, and I want to know I want to know why it is she went there. What we can do in this country to stop that from happening again.
She didn't know what she was doing, apparently. Lizzie.
Well, she's nothing but a traitor. She's a terrorist, and she shouldn't be trusted.
Well, she hasn't been convicted yet, to be fair.
Sam, this girl at the age of 15, an intelligent girl, she knew what she was doing. She wasn't going behind the bike sheds having a cigarette. She joined ISIS, a death cult. It is unforgivable, and I'm sorry, she is paying the price for her actions. Every action has a consequence, and I have no sorrow one bit for her, and I am disgusted with those that are giving her a platform. I think it's absolutely a disgrace to everyone,
but
particularly to the victims. No, to the victims of Manchester, to Lee Rigby and his family. How disgusting! And the BBC should be ashamed of themselves for giving her a platform. And I felt sick to the stomach seeing her on the front cover. Sick to the stomach.
So
shame on them.
What do you say to that? I mean, look, the issue here is more to say that they are putting it on not a pedestal, but putting them... I mean, look, I've never been on the front cover of the Times magazine. I mean, I'm available. You know what I mean? You should be. I've not been on the front cover of that. I've written and asked a documentary. Nobody's written my documentary. I'm sure I'm pretty interesting. Why is this person getting so much attention in this way when actually they're on trial at the moment in a camp in Syria because of the atrocities that they may well have created? That's what I'm saying. Why should this person be on that cover?
It's interesting because it is a scary topic. We all remembered when they went missing, etc. And people want to know her motivation and why she didn't know. I want to know.
She's spinning her own hard luck story to anyone that will listen.
As I just said, it is a cautionary tale, and so people can maybe watch it and see, because I've watched the documentary and there's nothing about it that makes anybody think, oh, she did a good thing, or like it was a good idea, or it looks fun, or in any kind of way at all.
But then why? So you want to write about this? This could be something that could be written in a thing, hidden somewhere. If people want to search, they can find it. What I'm questioning is the reasoning to put that on the front cover. It's insensitive to the people who have suffered as a result of something that she may have participated in. It's also a bit... it's one of those things that could actually encourage and incite others to do it, because they think, oh, look, I know I've done something bad, but I could end up on the cover of a newspaper and stuff like that. I am saying that from this perspective, the way I'm looking at it, you've done something bad. OK, by all means, people write about it, but you shouldn't be on the cover. You shouldn't have your own podcast. You shouldn't have your own documentary.
Such a good point. What a message is that sending out to others?
Exactly.
Exactly. And just because she wears a baseball hat and puts on a little bit of makeup and you're trying to westernise herself...
I see what you mean. But in like today's day and age, today's social media age, for example, I think, it's not past the realms of insanity to think that it should be on Celebrity Big Brother, like when that comes.
Well, that's the problem. I have a problem with that.
But I think this is a rarefied case because it was so massive in the press, and it's still massive in the press now, so therefore that makes it relevant.
But she's a national security risk.
But she's still a pariah. She's still a pariah. She's still a pariah, and no one's saying that she should come back to this country, or that she shouldn't face trial. Because I think if she did come back to this country, she should face trial. Yeah,
but where is it that you see somebody who's potentially a criminal getting a front cover, getting their own documentary, getting a podcast? Why? I just don't. I don't get this. You know, this is not somebody who, if you want to write about them, write about them, but they don't get the front cover, they don't get a podcast, they don't get a documentary.
Yeah.
They certainly don't get it from something broadcast that I'm paying a fee towards to actually facilitate.
The taxpayers are paying for this.
And also, does she have a PR executive? Do you know what I mean?
Who's managing this?
Working with her. Well, that's the whole thing. Like, I don't think anyone's managing it. And, like, and as Andrew Drury, who you've had on before, said that most of the things that she says in the documentary are lies compared to, like, what he has
what he knows. But obviously we haven't spoken to her, so we don't know, but... You know,
we're sick of her phony lies. I certainly am. And how dare the BBC give her a platform, honestly, and as you said, Nana, how disrespectful to the victims.
Well, it's no different to interviewing, like, a multiple murderer, do you know what I mean? Which people do.
Yeah, but she should be in court, not on TV blinking.
Look at the Netflix documentary about Jeffrey Dahmer. But people are interested in that sort of thing.
Fair enough, but I don't really agree with that either. But he's not on the front cover of a newspaper and everyone's talking about it. He gets his own podcast or documentary. It just, to me, doesn't work out that way. I mean, they might argue that it could dissuade people from doing it, but I would argue that actually seeing... I fancy a front cover, do you know what I mean?
But it's sending out totally the wrong message.
But I fancy a front cover.
Totally the wrong message. I felt sick to the stomach seeing her on the front page.
Is it about her retribution? Is that the goal?
Well, I don't know what...
But your fault by her, Sam, your fault.
It's about her getting back to the UK, but this shows nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices. Let's see what they think about the topic that we're discussing today. I've got 4 of them. Let's start with Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, the one in Northamptonshire. Miranda, what do you think?
Afternoon, Nana. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Talk to me. Are we glamorising it?
I'm with Lizzie on this completely. It's absolutely disgraceful that we are allowing this platform to continue. You know, we don't need to see her. We don't need to know anything. She's gone and committed, apparently, I'm going to wait when it goes to trial, some horrendous actions. The way she's behaved is horrendous. Why do we even need to know about her?
I don't even know.
I don't need her on a cover of a magazine, thanks.
I don't want to see her.
Yeah. And the whole aspect of this, you know, she was 15. I know 15-year-old girls. Yeah. I was a 15-year-old girl. You know, if you're naive, you don't go and join ISIS because you're probably a little bit scared and a little bit upset. You
exactly.
know, there's a lot more.
I'm with you. Listen, Miranda, I have to go to Jonathan Jones now in Cornwall.
No, I think it's bad. Hi, cheers.
Cheers.
It's very bad for the media to glamorise terrorists because, you know, I know why they glamorise general scallywags, because it gets us all anxious and, you know, talking about them and watching the media, buying more newspapers. I get that. But this is different. Unless the war on terror has finished, and I haven't heard if it has, then she's the enemy. Why are we talking about the enemy and giving them oxygen of publicity? I think Churchill had it right. When the war was on, Nana, he said the only thing you have to do is stockpile tea. OK, there were a few other things, but that was one of the main things.
You see, I had to get in with the tea before you. Okay, Jonathan Jones. Right, let's go to Lee Webb. Lee Webb, he's there in Bedford. Lee.
Hello, Nana. Basically, I'm disgusted with this, about the glamorisation of Shamima. We're a nation that appears to be cuddling a lot of our terrorists and giving them sort of like, you know, all this media and things like this. I think this is a nudge to prepare us for her coming back. What we got to remember with this terrorism, we should be prosecuting them and should never be sort of like allowing them out once they've committed these atrocities, and I think she has. We're a country also, like, we've just put a soldier through the courts and prosecuted them 2 weeks ago for historic allegations in Northern Ireland, while we've given terrorists letters of comfort in Northern Ireland, which will never be prosecuted. So we need to start making sort of like programmes about some of these veterans that are being taken through the courts in Northern Ireland.
Well, I mean, obviously the two cases aren't the same, but I get your point that you're making. Right, let's go to David Baum, who's there in Watford. David.
Good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I'm agreeing with everybody else, but actually what is interesting is the glamorisation and the sanctifying of Shamima Begum began the moment she was found in a camp. The people that found her had their own agenda to try and do that. They want to stop this, having her citizenship removed, so they make her glamorous, they make her this naive young girl who didn't know what she was doing, except, according to the far left, they want girls and boys to be married at 16 because, hey, they're adults, they know what they're doing. If you know what you're doing, these 3 girls took themselves off to Syria with the sole intention of joining ISIS, get married, and unfortunately she lost 3 babies. I'm very sorry for her. Manchester, a lot more parents lost more children. people died on humanitarian efforts in Syria.
What do you mean? She wasn't directly involved with the Manchester things, but I hear what you're doing. David Baum, we're running out of time. Good to talk to you. That's David Baum in London, in Watford, even Lee in Bedford, Jonathan in Cornwall, also Miranda in Northamptonshire. And a lot of people saying that she's been groomed. I mean, you know, but let's see what the BBC is saying, because before we move on, the BBC have previously said in relation to providing Shamima Begum a platform to air her story, there are different ways to tell the Shamima Begum story. There's the one about a 15-year-old schoolgirl who was groomed and lured to a war zone by ISIS and now needs saving from the Syrian detention camp. And there's the one about a traitor who fled to Britain to join ISIS and became known the world over as a terrorist and must be stopped from coming back to Britain. Shamima challenges the removal of her British citizenship by the UK government. I've examined her accounts to give listeners a definitive narrative on this complex, nuanced and shocking story. So that is with regard to her podcast, I think, that particular comment. But, of course, that is the other side of the argument. But now it's time for our quick-fire quiz. That's the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other stories hitting the headlines right now. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, press your buzzer. Lovely. And political commentator Sam Dowler. Your buzzer, please. Fabulous.
Pardon me.
Please play along at home. Question 1. Which popular TV show is potentially going to be taught to the university students? Is it A, The Apprentice, B, Happy Valley, or C, The Twins? Oh, Sam Dowler, I'll let you in.
I'm going to say Happy Valley.
It's going to say what do you think?
No, I was going to go for The Apprentice.
I would go for The Tweenies if I were you. It is Happy Valley, well done. Yes, the BBC drama had 7.5 million people tune into the finale, which was described as mould-breaking and incredibly unique in writing. OK, did any of you watch it, yes or no?
No.
No, I really want to, though. I'm going to catch up.
I don't think I'll be watching that. Question 2. One pensioner in Brazil is claiming to be the world's oldest man. But how old does he claim to be? Closest answer wins. Lizzie Cundy.
109.
Sam Dowler.
117.
I know the answer. It's 122. Sam Dowler, you're the winner. Very good.
Wow.
2-0 to Sam Dowler. Christ.
Someone that's older than me.
Who knew?
Well, the Brazilian pensioner claims that he was born in 1901. He had 13 grandchildren, 16 great-grandchildren. He even had a great-grandchild. Yes. Question 3. The singer, Sam Smith, appeared on the front cover of Perfect magazine, donning red heels and lingerie. But what did they caption themselves as? Was it A, Honey Roasted Sam, B, Honey Bunny, or C, the Milky Bar Kid? I'm going to go to Lizzie because you pressed your buzzer too soon.
Naughty, naughty. I'm going for B, honey.
Did you press your buzzer before you spoke?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
Naughty, naughty, naughty. What do you think?
I'm going for B,
Sam,
darling.
I want to say Honey Roasted Sam. I hope it is.
That's A. Let's see if you're right. It's A. Sam was a clean sweep so far. 2 more questions. Honey Roasted Sam, Sam and Lizzie. What did you think? So, briefly, the video, was it good, bad, ugly?
Terrible.
Good for them. I think they're pushing the boundaries and they're doing a great job.
Oh, as if it hasn't been done before.
True or false?
Yeah,
Question 4. The Royal Mail stamps will not feature King Charles wearing a crown. True or false? Sam Dowler.
True.
It is, in fact, true. Well done, Sam. Crikey. The new stamp will not feature a crown or any royal features, as the King wants to keep the design simple. Your final question, question 4. How did one man in Durham get back at a driver for parking a car too close to his doors? Was it A, painted the car pink, B, held an auction for it, or C, built a scaffold around the car? Lizzie Cundy.
I'd love to go for A.
A.
I don't know.
Sam Dowler, what do you think?
I don't know the answer, but I think it's built a scaffold around the car.
The answer is C. Built a scaffold around the car. My God, it's a Queen's Sweep for Sam Dowler. Sam and Lizzie, worst place, briefly, that you've ever parked. Lizzie, very briefly.
Oh, gosh, I'm the most worst part. I think just outside. No,
what do you think, Sam? Sam, quickly.
Oh, I've parked and I've ruined my car driving over like a bollard and all sorts. Terrible scenes.
Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, should we bring back compulsory national service? According to our Twitter poll, 65% of you said yes, 35% of you said no. Wow. Thank you so much to my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Lizzie, thank you very much. And also broadcaster and political commentator Sam Dowler. Thank you very much, Sam. And thank you to you for your company. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the top stories with broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Hope you've been enjoying the weekend so far. It has been a fairly settled and dry one for many of us, and that is thanks to high pressure that is centred across continental Europe and stretching its way into the UK, keeping those weather fronts at bay to the north. There is a bit more of a squeeze in the isobars across parts of Scotland, so it is breezier here. Underneath that high pressure centre, though, there is a fair amount of cloud, and that will stay with us into the evening and overnight. A few breaks are possible, I think particularly for parts of north-east Scotland into parts of Wales later on. So it's here where temperatures will drop down a bit more overnight, down into low single figures. A patchy frost and some fog are possible. But where we hold on to the cloud for the vast majority, it will stay frost-free around 7 to 6 degrees Celsius. Into tomorrow, the cloud is going to stay in place, particularly for southeastern areas of England, so it will be another fairly grey and drab day here. But the breeze picking up across some western areas will allow a few more breaks in that cloud for parts of southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland and into northern areas of England and Scotland as well. So where you get those sunnier breaks and those mild temperatures around 10 degrees Celsius, it will be relatively pleasant. Into the overnight period, we'll continue to see more of that cloud breaking up. So perhaps an increased chance of some frost now across parts of Scotland, northern England as we move into the early hours of Monday morning. And again, the risk of some fog patches are possible as well. The cloud, though, going to stay in place for areas in the southeast as we start off the new working week. High pressure keeping things relatively settled, though, throughout Monday, but as we move throughout the week, that is going to start shifting its way off to the east, and that will allow some weather fronts to move their way in from the west. So by the time we get to Wednesday, we could see a bit more rain moving in across some western areas, but temperatures staying relatively mild for the time of year. That's it for now. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
And it's Thursday on GB News. It's Bev Turner today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.